Let's look at Colorado here. Deion Sanders going into his second year as head coach of Colorado. You got to change up at offensive coordinator, kind of. Pat Shermer was the offensive coordinator at the end of last year, but really it's his first full year, first full off season to install what he wants to install.
Yes.
And I don't think it's going to look as like pro style as a lot of people are saying it's going to be. I think Pat Shermer is a good offensive coordinator. I do think Sean Lewis is better. I don't think that's a hot take. I think one coach has a head coaching job in college football and the other one does not.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean the quarterback room aside from Shador Sanders, look if Shador goes down, there's trouble. Okay. Um, he's a very good quarterback, all right? And people can hate on him for I don't know, things that he says, whatever. Honestly, I don't really care. He's a really good quarterback. He does have a problem, of course, taking sacks. Some of that was his offensive line, of course. But he's a good quarterback. He's a really good quarterback, and he elevates the play of this offense significantly. Significantly. And anyone who doesn't think so is crazy. Is crazy.
Yeah,
So
I'm not worried about them offensively at all. At all.
no, I think they take a step forward in their offense last year. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers. I mean, obviously their run game was horrendous last year, but I mean, you look at the I'm not gonna say efficiency metrics, but they did really well on third down. They did really well passing the ball, of course. They were a top half offense in college football. It's hard to call it that because the run game was so bad. People want to talk about this as like a top offense in college football. It was not a top offense in college football. It was a top half offense in college football. All right. They literally could not run the ball. They were dead last in yards per attempt running the ball, like dead last. Like out of 133 teams, they were 133. Okay. Um, yeah, they also averaged the least amount of rushing yards per game as well. So just yuck, right? Yuck. But the running back room gets a boost.
Well, it completely revamped. I mean, you lose your your top four running backs are all gone, right? For better or for worse. I do think Edwards is fine
I
piece
think
and
it's
so is
better.
McCaskill. Now, you would like to have a guy like Dylan Edwards in your room. Absolutely.
Sure. I think
But in terms
Hayden's
of running
really
between the
good.
tackle, yeah, running between the tackles, what you're gonna try to do a little bit more establishing that run game. Dallin Hayden's that dude. He's gonna be really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he's gonna be a bell cow. He's gonna be an absolute bell cow. And it'll help
And Michael
alleviate
Welch
some of
too. How about Michael Welch? 5'9",
that. Yeah, yeah.
195.
Could be beast. Could be beast. So I have no problem with the running back room and people sure if you disagree, you go in the comment section. Tell me that I'm an idiot for thinking that the running back room is decent because Hayden's back there. All right. Let's go to the receiver room. We already made a video about this. It is one of the best wide receiver rooms in college football. Debatable. All right. Debatable. And I know there's a lot of Colorado haters out there. I'm not I'm not I think that recruiting is very important. So I'm not of the opinion that Deion Sanders is helping his program by not really recruiting at the level that he should be. However, he did craft an absolutely devious wide receiver room. I mean, you're returning almost everyone. You don't get Xavier Weaver back. Fine. Okay. Upgrades. Will Shepard enter from Vanderbilt, who was, I don't know, their best receiver for like the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Although you could argue that London Humphreys kind of took the reins there, but I not took the reins. He wasn't more productive than Will Shepard, but in terms of like better athlete. Uh, yeah, Jimmy Horn comes back. You add LeJontay Wester.
Oh
Holy
man.
unbelievable! And look, you're gonna have Travis Hunter. They're gonna want Travis Hunter to play both ways, but at some point, man, at some point, the altitude, man, it's gonna get to him. It's
Or
gonna get to
injuries set in. I do think last year you brought in a bunch of guys and Weaver was good and Horn was fine for you. But I do think you needed like Hunter was one of your best receivers last year, and you kind of needed him to be playing and playing well. And that was just the depth situation that they had last year. This year, much different, right? You go six, dare I say, seven deep, and the bodies, the pure talent in this room too with the young guys. I know
A Marion Miller,
they don't recruit high
Braylon
school well.
Miller.
Yeah, Cordell Russell, a young kid from TCU, four-star high recruit as well. Miller had a nice spring, and he was the guy that burst on the scene, against USC, right? All in that second half, 200 some yards, right? It was crazy. And then he kind of disappeared. And it was like, what's going on there? But he was a freshman, right? It happens. He had a nice spring. It pairs with just a different body type than your guy like Webster or Horn or Hunter are. And Webster's also going to return punts too, probably. He was a all conference guy at FAU doing
Stud.
that.
Stud. He's unbelievable last year. 152 targets.
I mean,
2.66 yards per reception or per route run.
yeah. I mean, he's not going to be that kind of high volume in this offense. So
No,
there's other mouths to
no.
feed, but it's also he's going to have better matchups. He's going to have better opportunities. What he's going to do with those targets that he gets, he will maximize it more. And if you get a guy like him in space with some wiggle, see ya.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Well, let's talk about the offensive line. Speaking of making wiggle room in the run game, at least, I think it's better. I mean, obviously. I mean, I think Colorado upgrades pretty much almost at every position, right? Offensive line's one of them. Can Jordan Seaton play ball? Is a huge question. We know he was a 5-star recruit. He's coming there as a true freshman. It's very hard to come in to college football and play at an offensive tackle at a high level, 5-star or not. It is tough to come in and do that. Can he do it? Is the question.
Yeah. How quickly can you learn how much? I mean, he is the left tackle, right? It's pretty much, cemented in stone, but how quickly can he adapt? If he struggles, do they take him out? I mean, Shador Sanders took a ton of sacks last year, like you said. Now, were some of them his fault? Maybe, maybe not. But the reality was is he just did not trust his O line, and they couldn't run the ball either. So they were losing games. A lot factored into that. But Seaton, I mean, he just looks the part, man. That was a big time win to get a body like that to play left tackle for you. And it sounds like the early returns are pretty nice. He's learning quickly. It was really nice that he was there for the spring, which obviously gives you a huge leg up unless if he was a summer enrollee instead. But elsewhere, I think a lot of blending to do, right? A lot of, getting to know each other with bringing in what, like
Yeah,
six transfers.
five new offense. It's gonna be brand new for starting five.
Well, I mean, yes, yeah. Hank Zelinskas, he's probably coming back. He was only a freshman last year. He didn't play a ton, but he's at least a returning Colorado guy. It's going to be, in the top half of your rotation there. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other guys, Justin Myers, right? Good, really good pass protector for them. Um, Last year at UTEP, he'll be nice, I'm sure. Sanders will love having him behind to throw to. Khalil Benson from Indiana, another power four guy
I think an
with
interesting
good,
one that they got in the transfer portal was Peyton Kirkland,
yeah,
um, from Texas. It won't be a factor this year, but definitely an interesting depth piece there for sure.
yeah. And I'll throw one more, Tyler Brown, at left guard. He is a physical run blocker, and if you're trying to run the football more with Pat Shermer and Dallin Hayden, those guys, Tyler Brown would be nice to have, and what he can do, creating holes for you. Maybe he's not a every down starter, but in certain packages and certain drives against certain teams and whatnot. And we've already talked about a couple teams that I can see on their schedule this year with a light front seven. And if you want to move the football efficiently and keep these other good quarterbacks off the field, in the Big 12, running the football absolutely does that. And Tyler Brown, I know he's coming over from Jackson State, which is nice for Dion to reunite.
Well, let's move on to the defensive side of the football. Let's go to the D line. I mean, it's highlighted by transfers, and they're all, well, I say all, the ones that are going to play significantly are pretty good. I
Yeah.
mean, I look at BJ Green, who's all Pac-12. Well, we talked about him earlier when we talked about Arizona State. Very, very good football player. Dane Hayes, fantastic player for Pitt. I thought Samuel Okunlola was a really good player for Pitt as well. Chidozie Nwankwo for Houston, I thought was a very nice defensive tackle for them. Quincy Wiggins is definitely a good addition. He was a highly rated recruit over at LSU, just couldn't break um, that rotation like he
Yep.
wanted to. It's a like it is a I'll say a power five defensive line. Last year was not. This year it is a power five defensive line.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned those guys. Last year they brought in a ton of transfers, a little bit more fluff than substance. This is legit productive players at good programs over multiple years, or high upside guys that can be rotational guys like a Quincy Wiggins, uh, Chidozie Nwankwo. He's a guy, two-time state champion wrestler back in high school. You love that. You absolutely love that. We know how much we love our wrestlers on our offensive and defensive lines. Rayan Buell from Ohio, I believe. Uh, really good player, good run. He can be productive in the pass rush as well. Amari McNeil returns interiorly. You're looking at a pretty deep and experienced line. Now, it's not all with Colorado, but it's experience in college football in general, and how if they can gel together, if they can figure it out with the rest of that defense and Robert Livingston, it could be a pretty good group, which a year ago it was not. And the only question I do have is how consistently can they get to the quarterback? I like BJ Green. But who steps up beside him in terms of getting after the quarterback? But I do think you have enough bodies in there that somebody's going to, but we'll see how it gets to.
I think they'll have a chance to get some pressure on the quarterback. Um, it might not be perfect. It may not be perfect. How do you like this linebacker group?
I mean, you've got pieces, right? You've got Levante Bentley, who had 7 starts for them last year, second on the second team on tackles just a year ago, former Clemson transfer. You're bringing in a couple other guys, right? Nikhil Webb Walker, so State, Jalen Wester. I'm sorry, from FAU. He's a physical guy. He moves pretty well sideline to sideline. Johnny Chaney from Florida A&M. He was a good blitzer. He was a guy that was all SWAC kid there. And you've got some nice pieces here. We'll see how it shakes out, you know, at the top end. And you've got a couple pieces there. I don't know if the high end ceiling is there. I think it's a pretty average group all around. But
Yeah, I'd
you
say it's below average,
okay?
to be fair. That's what I think. I don't know. I don't think they're like you said that I think they're deep. I think they got the pieces there. I just don't know. And here's the thing, they run a bunch of different looks out there. So you could see a situation where a bunch of those guys are out there at the same time or different combinations of them. But I like uh I like Trevor Woods. I just I'm not in love with this linebacker group, if that makes sense. I'm not in love with it. I'm not married to it, you know? Uh I do like the secondary group though.
Yeah, they did a good job. I mean, they had some nice. I mean, you have 3 or 4 returning guys. Shallow Sanders, Cameron Craig, obviously Travis Hunter, one of the best cornerbacks in the country. That's a good place to start with. But I know they brought in a couple guys that you like as well, right?
Yeah, Preston Hodge. I like him at nickel for sure. DJ McKinney at corner. If he's the guy that ends up pairing with Travis Hunter on the other side and he ends up being good enough, we'll see. I don't know that I love the depth in this room, if I'm being honest. So I don't think you have a lot of margin to be mixing and match. I mean, I think there are pieces here. Okay. I just when I look at the depth, I don't see like the talents going all the way back. Does that make sense? Do you see it differently?
No, I think you're right. I think you bring in a young guy like Colton Hood. Don't think he's quite ready to play right away, but he's a nice piece. Again, similar to Peyton Kirkland, we talked about in the O line, where in terms of the future of the position, that's a guy that you're not recruiting in high school ranks well, but you're getting young transfer with multiple years of eligibility. You like that. Um, we'll see though. I mean, I
We'll see.
how much better is this defense from a year ago? Because last year it was not good, right?
I think
It
it's
was
pretty significant. Like, look, for example, I would say that this defense was looking at the numbers right now. I'm looking straight at them. I would say that they were a bottom 20 defense in the entire country.
yes,
But
no complaints here.
metrically, right, that doesn't necessarily mean like, obviously, if that defense was to compare, like go against like Akron's offense, they would do well. Like there's certain things to think about that, but like statistically, they hover around bottom 20, right? I think they'll break the top 90 at least. I think they could break top 80. This will not be a top half defense in college football. It probably won't be a top 75 defense in college football, but it doesn't have to be to see significant improvement in this defense. It really doesn't. So I also like the Robert Livingston hire as well at the defensive coordinator. I know you lose Charles Kelly over to Auburn. I think Robert Livingston was a good hire. Those you don't know, he was defensive backs coach at the Bengals. Uh, he was mentored by Lou Anarumo, who's Doctor Lou. If you know anything about him, it basically just super aggressive, right? And I think they're going to use some of the athleticism that they have in the secondary to their advantage. The question is, are they going to be overestimating the athleticism in that secondary? I don't know. That's up for. I think Coach Livingston's a very respectable defensive backs coach, so I have a feeling that he's just going to be fine in evaluating his talent in the secondary.
They've already talked about moving Hunter, like shadowing their best receiver, putting him in nickel, putting in different spots. It reminds me of Jalen Ramsey, right? What they did with him, playing him in the nickel or whatnot at the NFL level. It should be fun. I mean, overestimating. I mean, Travis Hunter is really good, right? I'm not gonna sit here and say he's not. He's unbelievable. But do the other guys step up? How quickly does Preston Hodge transfer over? Does Shiloh Sanders? How does he improve in coverage? Does DJ McKinney? I mean, you're gonna need a guy opposite of Hunter or filling in for him if he's moving into the slot. So I guess we'll see where it is there. But also, what helps a good secondary is, or what helps a secondary out is a good pass rush or a good defensive line, and whatnot. So, where you don't have to add an extra linebacker on the field to stop the run, whatever it may be. So, if those guys up front can get some good push, it's gonna help the defense all around, and that's part of the emphasis why they went out and got so many transfers in the D line, impact players.
Right. Let's look at their schedule. They get North Dakota State at home, Nebraska on the road, at Colorado State on the road. What? Sorry, that was redundant, but you get it. Baylor at home, at UCF, by then Kansas State at home, at Arizona, Cincy at home, you get a bye, at Texas Tech, Utah. Then you go play Kansas in Arrowhead, and then Oklahoma State at home. So I would say that month of November is brutal.
Telling me,
Brutal.
man, that is awful.
I mean, just for boot, they're like, oh, we'll give you a bye before we give you the Big 12's toughest 4 game stretch in uh yeah, so that's a brutal stretch. One thing I will say that's brutal about it too, you go to Arizona, right? Nebraska. It's not gonna be easy at all.
At Nebraska too. That place is going to be buzzing.
Yeah, Colorado State, uh when we saw that matchup last year, Colorado State is going to be coming back for them for sure. That was a very intense game. Very fun to watch, to be honest. The Cincinnati game also makes me nervous too. Like, if they can't figure out how to run the ball, I mean, it seemed like in the Pac-12, like late in the season, when teams really got to Shador Sanders, when one, they were able to get pressure on him as a quarterback, but two, when they kind of just sat back and in coverage and just you had 8 guys drop and made Shador Sanders uh pick things apart and make him have to basically make him have to do everything, right? And I could see Cincinnati in a situation where they might find themselves in an advantageous spot, and a spot where maybe their offense can compete, you know, uh, if Colorado struggles against that secondary. So yeah, the over under win total is at 5.5. I am going to take the under 5.5. I think there's a scenario where they definitely can make a bowl game. But I'm gonna go with the under 5.5. I do think they're not ready yet. I think that stretch in November is brutal. I think Nebraska on the road is brutal. I think Kansas State's brutal at Arizona. Like at UCF, I don't think they win. I don't think they win Kansas State. I don't think they win Arizona. I don't think they beat Nebraska. And then I don't think they win in the month of October or November. It's already 8, right? Not to mention the Cincinnati game's kind of tough. I think they'll beat Baylor for sure. Like, I just I have a really good feeling about this team and its potential upside for sure. And the offense is very scary, man. It is very, very scary how good it is, especially if that offensive line is as improved as we think it is. I'll still take the under. I mean, this is a team that was second to last in the country in penalties. I mean, Deion Sanders uh, taking the ball on offense first in overtime. I mean, these are factors in close games, and I think they're gonna have a lot of close games in the Big 12 because that's what Big 12 football is, you
Hmm.
know. And while I like Deion Sanders as a coach, I don't know if I love his in-game coaching. And his clock management, and so I'm gonna go ahead and take the under.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. As much as it pains me, as much as I thought I was going to take the over, I see 5.5. I feel see how good I feel about this team, especially the depth this year in year two of Sanders or of Dion. Wow, I can't believe I just called him Sanders. Um, yeah, it's but the schedule is brutal. I mean, North Dakota State, I mean, they're not what they once were, right? Still a fine program there. But at Nebraska, at Colorado State, those are going to take a lot of energy out of them. We saw what Colorado State did to them last year in Folsom Field. This time you're going on the road there. Now, obviously, you expect to win that game, but the reality is it's still going to put some wear and tear on your team. And yeah, I just can't get over that month of November, man. You got to get to 6 wins before you get to that. And I will say, to counteract that point there, I will say I do think they're going to beat one of the teams at the top, top five of the Big 12, and they play just about all of them, right? Kansas State, Arizona, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Those are probably 6 of the top 7, 8 teams in the Big 12 preseason rankings or odds for the championships. But unfortunately, they draw all of them. They miss out on BYU. They miss out on Houston. They miss out on Arizona State and some other teams toward the bottom half there. And you just you gotta fly with the bullets there. But yeah, I think the schedule's too tough. They're gonna beat some teams, right? The
Sure,
game's gonna be close, but I don't know if they're gonna win. 6 games is it's gonna be a lot big ask this year in the Big 12 to get 6 wins.